Welcome back to Reliable Sources. I'm Brian Stelter. I don't know about you, but I've heard the following phrase 100 times: economic anxiety. Whenever experts are on TV and they're asked what explains Donald Trump's rise, they seem to say economic anxiety. What they mean is the loss of manufacturing jobs, the impacts of globalization, the aftershocks of the 2008 financial crisis. And these are real factors. Trump promises jobs and better days ahead. But are the talking heads missing something when they pin it all on the economy? What about racial anxiety as a factor? I think this piece of the Trump story has been overlooked. Maybe because, let's face it, it's a lot more difficult to talk about. But as Slate's Jamel Bowie has noted, among white voters, higher levels of racial resentment have been shown to be associated with greater support for Trump. Jamel Bowie's view is that the white America's backlash to a black president is something that helped to spawn Trump and to get him to the point where he's now the GOP nominee in a presumptive way. Now, he and others have asserted that "Make America Great Again," that slogan we see on those signs, is really about restoring whites to a preferred position in an increasingly multicultural America. The Atlantic Derek Thompson has also written about this. Here's something he said. He said, "Many racists are not poor, and many poor whites are not racist. But for many voters, race and economics are not separate issues." So when reporters and commentators do separate them, aren't they failing to tell the full story of what's going on? Tim Wise, an anti-racism educator who's the author of several books on the topic, and W. Kamau Bell, the host of CNN's United Shades of America, join me now to discuss this. And Tim, let me go first to you. Do you think that journalists are doing a disservice to the audience when we don't put the racial context here of Trump support?
Well, of course. If the only reason for Trump's support was economic anxiety, then people of color should be flocking to Trump, because black folks, for instance, are twice as likely to be out of work as white folks, 3 times as likely to be poor, 1/15 the net worth, 9 years less life expectancy, in large part due to economic inequality. So if it were just economics, people of color should be rallying to him, but it is not. So there's a link between the kind of economic anxiety that white folks are feeling and this larger political or racial anxiety. Really what it comes down to is, if you think about it, it's the same way that Southerners, and I am a Southerner, will say, well, the Civil War wasn't about slavery. It was about states' rights. Yeah, but the right you were fighting for was the right to own people. So when folks in the Trump camp say, well, it's not about race, I like the fact that he says what's on his mind. Yeah, but you like that he says things about Mexicans and about the Chinese and about black activists in the streets protesting police brutality, and he says things about Muslims. In fact, all of those things that people say Trump is about, economics, the straight shooting, straight talking guy, all of that still comes back to his perspective on othering other people and saying they're your threat. They're the ones who endanger your job. They're the ones who are to blame for your lack of safety in the streets. It's very much about racialized scapegoating, and economics, of course, make it possible to combine things. But at the end of the day, it's still very much about identity.
Kamau, I was wondering if you picked up on this during your travels for your show here on CNN United Shades of America. I was thrilled you were able to join us because you've been traveling to so many states for the series. Have you picked up on what Tim is describing here?
America was built on racial anxiety, so it's no surprise that it's still here right now. And I think the thing we try to do with the show is actually have conversations with people and not just shout slogans at them the way Trump is doing. And I think that if you get to have conversations with people, you can reach sometimes a new level of understanding, or at least making more space for the humanity. But Trump is capitalizing on people's most base fears.
Why do you think, if that's the case, let's take that as true for a moment, if you believe it. Why do you think we don't hear it more often here on television? Why don't we read about it more often? Why isn't it a more integrated part of the analysis about Trump's rise to the GOP nomination?
I'll take that one.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that's what I meant. Yeah.
And then I'll pass it lovingly back to Tim. Thanks for bringing the facts and figures. I appreciate that, Tim. But yeah, America's always afraid of a race conversation. Not all of America. If you read Jamel Bowie or TheRoot.com, there's lots of media covering it. But mainstream media, which is in large part owned by white people, is always afraid of a honest and open race conversation.
Right. Well, and the media is very afraid. You know, Trump actually bashes the media in a very specific way, right? And so the media gets very intimidated by the thought that if they accuse his supporters of somehow being motivated by racial anxiety, that then Trump will say, see, they think you're all racist, and then that would actually potentially fuel his support. So I get some of the trepidation, but we have to start being honest. I mean, the biggest mistake, how many media folks have actually asked Donald Trump or any of his key supporters, hey, what does that hat mean? You're wearing this hat that says Make America Great Again. When exactly was America great? And not just for white men with money like Donald Trump, but when was it great for people of color? When was it great for LGBT folk? When was it great for women as women? No one is. I want Donald Trump to name a year for me. I want to know because let me tell you what, back when the Tea Party was saying they wanted to take America back, I asked a Tea Party person, what year do you think we want to go back to? And she said 1957, which of course made perfect sense because that was the year Leave It to Beaver premiered and white folks loved that. But it didn't actually probably translate to a very good time for black people. So I want somebody to pin Trump down. Here's a slogan. It's right on his head every day and no one asks him what it means and how racially identified it is.
I've heard some interviewers ask him. What I haven't heard is a specific answer, a specific date. It's something he's not provided. And you think he should provide a specific year in order to answer it?
I want a year, a decade, an era, something, because any year you pick is going to not be a really great one for anyone but the dominant group. And I think that's the important thing to remember. If someone could just nail it down, then we could have a conversation, because any year that you pick is going to be a nostalgized version of America. It's going to be a version that some people can remember fondly, but an awful lot of people wouldn't. And we need to then ask, why is it that so many white folks want to go back to this fictive time? And that's what that racial anxiety is about.
You point out that the mainstream media, yes, is mostly run by white men. And I wonder, if there's something here about why networks don't have full-time race and ethnicity correspondents on TV, and why there's relatively small coverage of these topics in mainstream media. Certainly, I would say your show is part of the solution to this. But are there other recommendations you have as someone who lives this every day, who thinks about these issues for your program?
I mean, I think, maybe it'd be great to have a race conciliation person in everybody's office, but you also just need more people of color and more LGBT and more different types of people. Because even on my show, United Shades of America, I was the only person of color on that show during production, which meant sometimes I would say things and everybody around me would look at me like I was crazy, and I'd be like, can I go get a black person to step into the room right now so you guys know I'm not crazy? And I think it's not just about having one person, it's about having a bunch of different types of people. There's more ideas in the room, because that's when you get great ideas. You don't get great ideas from everybody when everybody's the same. You get great ideas when everybody's different, has different ideas.
Yeah, I keep thinking about how to make these conversations happen on TV and how to make it comfortable to have them. It's not about saying all of Trump supporters are racist or even that many of them are racist, but it's about the racial undercurrents of what's happening in this campaign. And I guess to your point, Tim, about some of the rhetoric we hear, the us versus them rhetoric. Trump, unlike many other candidates, speaks in a way where he's speaking to his supporters versus them, the others who are not his supporters.
Right. Well, and part of the reason we don't do very well with these conversations is we don't realize, many Americans, I don't think, realize that the game that Trump is playing by blaming black and brown folks for the problems of working class or struggling middle class white people is a very old game. I mean, the history of America.
To be clear, he doesn't come out and say, I'm blaming the black people. He doesn't say that explicitly.
No, of course not. But what he says they're coming in as rapists and drug dealers. The Muslims are terrorizing you. The Black Lives Matter people are making the cities unsafe. And the Chinese are screwing you on trade.
I mean, those aren't direct quotes, but I hear you. I mean, Kamal, you're laughing at me. You think I'm being too careful here?
I think, well, I understand. There's a thing, and I get what you're trying to do. I respect you, let me say that. But I think there is a fear even calling Trump supporters racist, when in my circles, we're like, yeah, a lot of them are racist. Like, there's a fear of that word in this country that we can't even apply it when it actually makes sense. When you see black people getting beat up at Trump rallies, I feel like I can call some of his supporters racist, but we're so afraid of that word that we won't even use it when it applies sometimes. Racist is something that, like, when somebody drops the N-bomb, we go, oh, that's racist. But we won't apply it to other situations where it clearly, to me and my people, like even when you say we aren't having these conversations, what you really mean is white people aren't having these conversations, generally, except for Tim Wise and his white people. But you're saying, but black people, I just had that conversation before I got here. You know what I mean? So it's like there are people in this country who are having these conversations. It's just not getting,
And to be blunt about it would perhaps go along toward having more of those conversations. Tim, Kamal, thank you for being here this morning. Great to see you.
You bet. Thank you.
Coming up next here is the king of